What is going on, everyone? It's Justin here, back on the Feature Podcast channel, and today we're taking a look at the iPad Air 4 for 2020 that starts at a price point of $599. So this, of course, is my podcast channel where we give you like kind of a raw conversation about like business, tech, lifestyle, and travel. But I feel like it's a good segment to have where we just like take a look at some of the products that just came in and just give you like an unscripted opinion on it. Because on the YouTube channel, obviously the videos are more structured. So if you guys want to see like a cinematic video and all that, then go ahead and subscribe to my main channel, youtube.com/JustinSay. And also follow me over on Instagram, justin.tse, where I give you like a behind the scenes look, answer your questions, and I also have some lifestyle content there as well. But today, I thought I would just like give you a kind of rundown on the iPad Air 4 because I think this is going to be one of the most popular Apple products in the tablet category for the next couple years and the holiday season especially, because it is just such a good value, and I would almost say Apple kind of over-delivered in some ways with this model. So let's go ahead and talk about the iPad Air 4, and from first looks, it looks the same as the iPad Pro. The form factor is the same. You have these squared off edges. You also have the kind of magnet and charger right here for the Apple Pencil 2nd generation. And instead of having just a sleep wake button on the top, that also has the fingerprint sensor. But from the front side, it is just like the same look, a 10.9-inch display instead of an 11-inch screen. The bezels around are pretty small, and the fingerprint sensor on the bottom is completely gone. You also have USB Type-C on the bottom. But I think the iPad Pro is one of the best designed Apple products out there, and I have no complaints. It still doesn't feel like outdated or anything since its initial release in 2018. When it comes to the display though, this shares pretty much all the main great features of the iPad Pro. It is a liquid retina display with a 264 ppi, but it does have the same DCI P3 color gamut, which is great for photo editing while having the entire range of colors and everything, very vibrant. And in terms of brightness, it is 500 nits as opposed to 600 nits on the iPad Pro, which is about a 17% difference. And for the most part indoors, you really aren't going to notice a big difference there. It's only when you go like outdoors that extra 20% can really help. It also has True Tone, so it adjusts to like the color balance of the given room. And the only main thing that you're missing that some people may really want is ProMotion, which is a 120 hertz fast refresh rate that you sort of notice when you're scrolling around and potentially if you're using the Apple Pencil a lot. So the other big talk is the Apple processors. The A14 is the one that you're going to find on the iPad Air 4, and that is Apple's latest and greatest. In fact, it was the first product that Apple announced with this new chip, and that actually makes it more powerful on the processing side than the iPad Pro, which uses an A12Z. In comparison to the older generation iPad Air, you get a 40% improvement in CPU through the 6-core processor and a 30% improvement on the GPU through the 4-core processor. So if you notice like any sort of lag or maybe a drop frame in an intensive game on the iPad Air from the previous generation, then this is essentially the most powerful mobile processor that Apple has ever made that is found in this iPad Air at a starting price of $599. The other difference though is that you're getting 4 gigs of RAM as opposed to 6 gigs, and unless you have like every app open and all of them are very graphic intensive, or you've got like a lot of video editing, I think for the average person or for most people buying this iPad, you're really not going to notice. But I think what is most interesting and kind of goes along with the talk of the A14 processor is Apple's ecosystem. And from what we've seen in the past couple of years, Apple has really broadened their lineup. The iPhone lineup now starts at $399 with a 2019 model processor, and you now have an iPad that starts at $329 with an older processor. You have one at $599 with the newest processor, and you have the iPad Pro with an A12Z. And I think what that means is that Apple is going to be updating the iPad Pro relatively soon, maybe even as early as March of 2021. And that is going to have both a mini LED display, which is going to bring some improvements and give characteristics of OLED, as well as a new chipset. For Apple though, ecosystem is everything, and if they can get you into their system of their applications and their services and stuff that you have to pay for, then for them, giving you the latest and greatest processor only benefits them as well, because in turn, you're able to get the best and newest and fastest experience of Apple's applications and stuff that they're able to offer for many years to come. And I imagine models like this iPad Air and like the iPhone SE are gonna get updates for a minimum of 5 years down the road. It is essentially like a no bottleneck option into Apple's ecosystem. As someone who's kind of jumped around between the MacBook and the iPad though, I believe that the iPad has headed in a direction that has convinced me to only use this as my travel machine. And whether it is like emails, accounting apps, going to like Photoshop and Lightroom, doing Procreate, and pretty much everything that I do on my computer aside from video editing, I can get it done just as well, if not even better, on a tablet. It is just so efficient. You really do get the full experience on a lot of the apps, including the Adobe and also the Microsoft Office suite. And that is just because the chipset is very capable. And that just really gets me excited for some of the ARM-based MacBooks that are coming out in November, though I am a little bit skeptical in terms of performance and third-party support of applications for the first few Apple chip models. One of the other differences though is Touch ID instead of Face ID, and I actually really like it. I feel like it is a very easy method to use. Whether you have it in this mode, you can use your right hand, or over here you can use your left hand. And I find that on my iPad Pro, I often kind of press the sleep wake button to turn it on, but my palm ends up covering the camera, so Face ID ends up taking 2 tries. So I actually really like this option, and it would be nice if they end up doing like 2 forms of biometrics in the future, but give me the option to use both Face ID and Touch ID. The other difference though is the camera, and here you've got a singular camera setup that is 12 megapixel at an f1.8 aperture, and honestly, from 2018 till now, when I really started using the iPad, I've used that camera like maybe once, not much at all, because most of the time I've got my iPhone, I can take photos on that, and it's got like multiple lenses that the iPad camera just doesn't really mean much to me. But if you do use the camera a lot, you want to have ultra wide, and you use like AR related apps, then the iPad Pro is going to be an easy option. But for this, you have the same main camera as the iPad Pro, which looks pretty solid, but I'm sure for a lot of people, like multimedia and productivity is going to be above the camera quality of your tablet. When you look at the lineup and accessories though, this is where it gets a little bit interesting as to which iPad you should buy, which accessories you should buy, and whether or not you should buy Apple's expensive pieces and which one is worth it. It is definitely a tough choice because honestly, as skeptical as I was about the smart keyboard, it works very well, and it has the same kind of mechanism as the MacBooks, which is a scissor switch. It is illuminated, you've got the trackpad. This thing also like floats and pivots, and it's just all like very well put together. And you've also got the Apple Pencil as well, which kind of opens a whole new world assuming you use it. To be honest with you, I've used my Apple Pencil like maybe a couple times, not as much as I probably should, but if you're willing to like do art or you do like photo editing, then the Apple Pencil is going to change your experience entirely, and you're not able to get that feel anywhere else but a tablet. When you look at the price point of the lineup, the iPad Air starts at $599, and that is for 64 gigs. And if you're doing like a lot of like cloud-based storage stuff, documents and like photo editing that is also stored on Adobe, you're not really going to need anything more than that. But if you're downloading a ton of Netflix shows on offline mode, which I do a lot, then I have burned through 64 gigs pretty quickly. The next model up though for the iPad Air is $256, and that comes in at a price of $749. And even though Apple is offering a pretty good deal on that $599, they're not really letting you get away because the iPad Pro starts at $799. So you've got a decision to make. The iPad Pro at $799 has 128 gigs, whereas the iPad Air at $749 has 256. And with that extra $50, you're getting a 120 hertz ProMotion, a 17% brighter display, but you've also got a couple extra cameras on the back, including the LiDAR on the ultra wide, as well as a quad speaker setup compared to the stereo that you get on the iPad Air. And for $50, I feel like that sounds pretty good. And if you can manage to get away with using 128 gigs instead of 256, then I feel like it kind of makes sense just to go ahead and get the iPad Pro. So the iPad Air, I would say, is the best deal at its base option. These accessories though are not cheap. The pencil is quite expensive and so is a stand. So if you want to save money, the first area that I would recommend is getting a third-party keyboard. That can probably shave off about half the price. And when it comes to the pencil, say you save some of that money that you would have spent on the Apple Magic Keyboard on a third-party one and an official Apple Pencil, that will bring you to pretty much the same price, maybe around the $700 price point. So in my personal opinion, if you want to save money, the iPad 8 is a very good value. But for the amount of extra that you spend on the iPad Air 4, you're definitely getting a lot more and is way more similar to the iPad Pro than it is the iPad 8. So at that point, I would say the most popular model that I can recommend is the base model 64 gig Air with a third-party keyboard. And if you really need it, then get the Apple Pencil, but I feel like for a lot of people, you're really not gonna use it that much unless you're doing like art specific to the iPad or photo editing. But otherwise, I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comment section below. And as I said, I'm gonna try to bring back the podcast as soon as possible once some time frees up, and I'll see you guys in the next video.